So this video I want to focus on talking about psychology of crime. Now this isn't something that I've been normally into. I'm into superheroes like Spider-Man and I guess kind of Batman. And I've never been too into Batman, let me just be honest. But I can try to appreciate it because I like a lot of superheroes. But I do like, and specifically about Batman though, is Joker and Harley Quinn. And then also, and I'll get into that because this is kind of foreshadowing, but, my favorite superhero is Spider-Man, obviously. But, you know, that has always been my source of like psychology of crime or understanding crime was, seeing, because Batman's kind of a detective, or, he is a detective, especially with some of his criminals and enemies that he go against because, like the Riddler who leaves like clues and riddles and stuff like that. But, I'll get into that in a second, but I would say that was my kind of outlet for, crime and understanding crime and, what's the word? I don't want to say being entertained. I guess, be entertained by crime, but also being educated about crime. Because crime can be entertaining. When you have the Bonnie and Clyde criminal romance, or when you have, I wouldn't say Robin Hood, but Robin Hood can kind of be entertaining, but they're, or Now You See Me. Now You See Me is a great example because, it's about a group of magicians who, they do crime, but they do crime against rich people. And they steal from rich people and, greedy people or not even, I just trying to think of the word, but people that, might not be the greatest. So they'll take a whole bunch of money or take their riches from them and give it to, poor people or a lot of people that probably deserve it more than the other people. But it's hard to explain because, I watched a new movie and, their audience, they apparently took a whole bunch of cryptocurrency from a group of rich men and they gave it out to their audience and sent it all to the audience. So, but it's like their audience could have been anybody. But it's like, I guess if like you were a fan of them and you show up to their show, then you got rewarded with, or compensated for, being a fan of them. And so it's like, I don't know if that would be an example of, taking from the rich and giving to the poor because, their audience could have been anybody. Making crime entertaining like that because they would do crime but do it in a magician's way. Now you see me, now you don't, or I'm gonna be slick, and they would do like a heist. And there was this moment where they had like a playing card and they were throwing it back to each other and stuff like that, and guards were coming up to them and checking their pockets and patting them down and searching them, and they would be slick and just throw like a playing card, but that playing card had like a chip that had like, I guess, money or something on it, and they were trying to steal it from this like rich company. And they were just throwing this playing card like magicians, being sleight of hands, being slick and tricky. But I find that to be entertaining, especially with the camera work and the music and all that stuff, and then also the actors, how they were able to pull it off and everything. It's just about putting on a show. But they were putting on a show while doing crime, and so I find that interesting to making entertainment out of crime. You could just say the same thing about Batman, Joker, and Harley Quinn, and that's how I've taken my outlet for crime and understanding crime and being entertained by crime was through like Now You See Me, having the magicians, having the magicians do crime or putting on a show while they do crime, or Batman and Joker and Harley Quinn, or having superheroes entertain you while they put bad guys in jail or criminals in jail. And so that was kind of like my source. That was probably the most interest I had in crime, was from the perspective of superheroes. And my mom was into like murder documentaries and podcasts, mystery podcasts about understanding murderers or serial killers and stuff like that. But I would listen to it and watch it stuff with her. And I like Scooby-Doo and stuff like that. them solving mysteries. I used to watch Scooby-Doo with my grandma, and I enjoyed watching Scooby-Doo with her. And that's kind of what I mean by making entertainment out of crime. Like Scooby-Doo is a great example, but the very serious documentary, we're going to investigate and interview everyone that the serial killer interacted with and people that knew the serial killer, and we're gonna make a documentary about it. I find it very serious, but I mean it can be entertaining and it can be educational, but I wouldn't really want to go and watch a Ted Bundy podcast or a Ted Bundy documentary or even a Jeffrey Dahmer. Now I just didn't find that interesting. Now I don't know. It's like if a woman was interested and I was interested in a woman who was interested in watching it, I might watch it with her. But me watching it on my own, I don't see. I would probably see myself, and I haven't done this, but I've been thinking about it recently. I feel like I would enjoy Sherlock Holmes because he kind of comes off as an entertaining detective. I mean, even though he can be serious, but I feel like that is kind of like, because he's a fictional character, but I mean maybe he was based off of a real person, but that, and I don't know that for sure, but I feel like having Sherlock Holmes, like being able to create fantasy or create stories or create tell a decent story and being able to capture the attention of the audience in a not cultivating, but in a I guess mesmerizing way, that is not in a Ted Bundy documentary way. You get what I'm saying? It's hard to explain, but if you catch my drift, you catch my drift. But like, and I'm probably doing a terrible job of explaining it, just being honest. But I'm trying my best. So, but yeah, my me understanding the psychology of crime has always been from the perspective of Spider-Man or Batman or Scooby-Doo, if that makes sense. And I do want to, and I am going to try my best to understand the psychology of crime even more and expand my horizons and try to take in different medias like Sherlock Holmes, because I know it's a book, Sherlock Holmes, but I know they also make movies with Benedict Cumberbatch and Robert Downey Jr. But I do want to try to open myself up more to this kind of atmosphere, because there is, I mean, not that there's money to be made in this, but I don't even want to make money from this. I mean, if I do, I do, but and it would be cool if I do. I don't know how. I'll make another video talking about money, but people make a lot of. There's an industry in terms of psychology of crime, and there is a lot of money in it, in terms of detectives being paid a huge amount of money to solve a case, or in terms of the Hollywood industry making a whole bunch of entertaining movies and documentaries. Like, it's literally a category in a TV station, multiple TV channels about crime, or about mystery, or about like the psychology of crime. I met females who were studying in college that were studying crime and psychology. Like, I was majoring in crime, detective, whatever, and I'm minoring in psychology. And I was like, I find that interesting, but I find it interesting because I want to question, why do people commit crime? Why do people commit crime? Like, that, I do find myself curious about that. And the answer that I came up with, the best answer I came up with, is survival. Now I don't think that's the only answer, but I do want to dive into people committing crime out of survival, because you have, when I say survival, I kind of mean like hunger or sex. And hunger, you have people that are so hungry and they're starving and they just want to stay alive, and they'll steal some food or maybe rob someone just so they have some money, so that way they can keep themselves alive and keep food in their stomach. And they'll commit crime to just satisfy their survival basic needs like hunger. And then there is another thing that I noticed, is that there's some people that have enough money to cover their hunger needs and basic survival needs, but they still commit crime. And I find that interesting. Why do people who have enough money to cover, to put food in their stomach, still commit crime? And I figured it out, or I think I figured it out, and my theory is to be more sexy and to come off as bad so that they come off more sexy, so that it's part of the sexual mind. It's still part of the survival mind, even though they might have enough money to put food in their stomach. Coming off as sexy towards other people isn't the same as putting food in your stomach. You see what I'm saying? So even though you might have enough money to put food in your stomach, you coming off sexy to people is probably a different category, even though it's still survival, part of survival. Because I feel like when a woman desires to come off sexy, it's probably because she's lacking in her femininity. And if a man desires to come off sexy, it's probably because he's lacking in his masculinity. And I think people you want to come off as sexy when you're lacking in your personality. Maybe, it's hard for you to be, comedic, and hard for you to make people laugh. Or maybe it's, you might be a terrible cook, you don't know how to cook, you cook terrible food. Or maybe, you have a poor fashion choice, you don't know how to clothe yourself. And that's the difference between separating beauty from sexiness and, separating beauty from lust is you can dress like think about the way that people dress themselves. You could dress yourself to come off as sexy, or you could dress yourself to come off as professional, proper, looking nice, looking beautiful, and I'm trying to think of the word, but looking presentable, you know what I'm saying? Like looking nice. And men can come off looking sexy if they want to come off looking sexy with their clothes, wearing like, I guess, that white muscle t-shirt, with your muscles popping out, and maybe having a tattoo, and maybe what's the word? What's another thing? I guess like a chain, wearing some, a chain, like a gold chain, or having a nice haircut. Certain haircuts can come off more sexy, but then certain haircuts, depending on your haircut, because my haircut, it's kind of, all over the place, but, taking care of your hair, using nice conditioner and nice shampoo, making sure your hair smells nice and look nice, and also getting nice haircuts can make you come off, I don't know, about the haircuts and how that can play in a role with sexiness, but I think clothes are a big thing, because if a woman wants to come off looking beautiful and nice and be more feminine and be complimented for her beauty and her appearance and not be lusted after, and not have men look at her as sexy, which I do think that, and I'll kind of get into that, but a woman because if you're trying to come off as sexy and you want to be more sexy, wearing a tight dress, wearing, there's certain, like high heels, or, I wouldn't say high heels are, immediately sexy, but, there are certain appearances that you can wear that, come off as a sexy look, okay? Especially for a woman, for men too, but if a woman wants to come off looking nice and beautiful and feminine and not want to have men look at her too much as sexy, then, wearing stuff like cardigans and, sweaters, and I'm not just saying being fully clothed up, but wearing clothes that make you look nice, that, complement your appearance, okay? And, like, trying to think of what else, wearing like a sundress, or wearing, I don't know too much about women's fashion, okay? And also wearing hats, like, a women can wear hats too, but as a man, if I want to come off more presentable and professional, and, especially, what's the word, trying to think of the word, especially someone like me, I want to come off as adequate, or smart, or educated, so I would want to wear a cardigan. I would want to wear, let's see, like chino pants or nice pants, and having like a nice like brown leather belt. Also being able to, or like wearing a trench coat during the winter, or wearing I'm a plain kind of t-shirt guy, but I can wear a plain t-shirt and maybe put a Hawaiian shirt with it, nice Hawaiian shirt looking, and wear some nice shorts, cargo shorts, and some sandals, socks and sandals. And I can have that as my appearance, and I can come off, as I'm not sure how that's gonna come off, but I just kind of want to come off as comfortable and cozy, and yeah, I mean, I don't want my clothes to kind of come off as I'm sexy. I want my clothes to come off when people look at me like, I do want it to kind of reveal, part of my personality. Like, me wearing a mushroom hat, or, me, wearing, the cross, or, think about, getting, I used to make bracelets when I was a kid, like paracord bracelets, but I want to make a paracord bracelet again because it's a survival bracelet. Because you can use, apparently, if I remember correctly, you can use paracord bracelets to for like survival, because they're called survival bracelets, but you can use them to keep a fire going longer, or start a fire, or something like that. It's supposed to help with a fire, getting a fire going. And so having a paracord bracelet, it is a nice touch to my fashion style. But and I would have it purple and black, because I think that would, purple in the front and then black in the back for the background. But I feel like, how we wear it, how we present ourselves in the public world, it can reveal a lot about our personality and our character. Like the cross reveals more about my character than personality. And, the survival bracelet would, the purple color would reveal my favorite color, and personality. But also the survival bracelet will kind of reveal my survival part of my character, because I was homeless before. I learned to start a fire this past winter on my own. And I do kind of try to get into the survival mind, because I do want to learn how to grow plants, and I do want to, learn more survival skills. So, that's part of my character and part of my personality. So that's what I mean about how our fashion can, affect other people's perception of us and how they view us, and how we come off to the public world. Our first impression, our appearance has a huge impact on our first impression. So that's what I'll say. And so, our fashion style can help us come off more as beautiful and presentable and looking nice, and we can still be creative and have a sense of fashion without trying to come off as sexy. And like I said, I feel like women or men will, if a man desires to come off as sexy, he is probably lacking in his masculinity. And if a woman desires to come off as sexy, she's probably lacking in her femininity. And so how can a man work on his masculinity, be more masculine, okay, and get in touch with his masculinity, okay? And I will say a man can get in touch with his masculinity and be more masculine by being a provider and being a protector, and stop masturbating, and also learning how to talk to women. So a man, by providing for himself, and just basic, doing it for himself before he does it for a woman. But I as a man have to learn to protect myself and defend myself on my own without the help of another human being. Before I can defend a woman, I have to defend myself I have to defend myself on my own before I can defend a woman who's going to be with me. So that's something I have to learn, and I am trying to get better at defending myself and practicing self-defense, like verbal self-defense, but even physical self-defense. But it's even more than that, because you could be a protector, but you also need to be a provider. Like, being able to pay rent, being able to pay groceries, and also being able to provide for your woman. Even though we live in modern society and men and women both work jobs, we're both trying to have a 50-50 equal relationship, I do think that men can be more masculine when they provide, when they take care of the providing for their woman. And women can feel more feminine when they have a man providing for them, and also protecting them. And a man, and women can feel more feminine when they're in touch with, or women can feel more feminine when they're around men who are in touch with their masculinity and femininity, okay? So, if, as a man, you buying, part of providing, but you buying a woman flowers or buying her clothes, that's part of helping a woman feel more feminine and helping you be more masculine, just by you doing that. And also letting your woman dress you up. Not letting your woman buy you clothes, but you pay for it, you try to, but letting your woman pick out your clothes for you. that helps her be more feminine. And I know a lot of women, some women might not care, but I know a lot of women probably, I don't want to say a lot, but some women want to dress up their man. They like doing that. It helps them be more feminine. And so that's ways that a man can help a woman be more feminine. Also, cooking, they say cooking is feminine. I do think cooking is feminine. But I think cooking is masculine and feminine because, if you look at grilling or smoking, I guess it could be considered masculine. And then when you look at baking, I would say grilling is kind of like a masculine version of cooking, and baking is kind of a feminine version of cooking. But I do think that men can, learn how to cook for themselves and become decent cooks and better cooks. And it's part of them getting in touch with their masculinity and their femininity. Cooking, and I do think men should, I do think it's okay for men to cook for their woman, but I do think that a woman could feel way more feminine when she cooks a delicious meal and she has men complimenting her cooking and, telling that, when a woman is complimented for her beautiful appearance and not lusted after, and, having men call her sexy, and she's, just saying, hey, I think that, your cardigan looks nice, or, your clothes look nice today. That is not, trying to, lust after a woman. That is just complimenting her beautiful appearance, and that can help her feel more feminine. And also complimenting her cooking. So if she cooks something that's very delicious, complimenting her cooking. If it's terrible, be honest with her that it's, it could taste better or it needs more salt or whatever, but if it's delicious, compliment her for her cooking. It will help her feel more feminine. And, it goes the other way around. As a man, I want to be complimented for my appearance too. I want to be complimented for my cooking too. Having a woman compliment, saying, hey, I think what you cooked was delicious. It tastes nice, and you did a great job cooking. Or, your clothes look nice on you. You look nice today. You look handsome. Having a woman tell me that makes me feel more masculine. It also helps me, just appreciate her femininity, because her complimenting my appearance and her cooking also probably make her feel more feminine, but it makes me view her as more feminine when she does that to me. I feel like, but yeah, also I'll kind of get into romance, because I feel like you have romance without lust, and then you have romance with lust. And romance without lust, I will look at, going to the movies together. I would look at watching the sunrise or the sunset, or I would look at, going on vacation together, the dream vacation, or if you want to go to a romantic place like Italy or Paris, France. Yeah, but like I said before, if you want to buy her flowers, or if you want to buy her clothes, these are examples of romance without lust, okay? And then you also have romance with lust. And this is how I want to do it. Everyone has their own way of how they want to live their life. But romance with lust, I want to wait until marriage and have a honeymoon with wine and music, and maybe we go to the beach, and we get a nice hotel, or we go somewhere special, and I try to set the mood, and silk sheets and silk pajamas, and lighting some candles. That's how I would make, that's how I would have my romance with lust. And so, but that helps her be more feminine. I feel like doing these things can help women be more feminine and help men be more masculine. And yeah, so psychology of crime. Now you also, so I said that, I feel like people commit crime out of survival, which could be, hunger, you're starving and you're stealing, or you're committing crime because you're trying to eat. But then you also have, people that are, they have their survival needs taken care of, but they are not they want to come off as more sexy. And so they commit crime to come off as bad because it comes off as sexy. Then you have that, okay? And then you have situations like Joker and Harley Quinn. Because, Joker is considered the clown prince of crime, okay? And I said this in my book, and I talked about Harley Quinn and the Joker in my book. but I'm gonna go into it a little differently and more in this video. But you have situations where Joker isn't committing crime because he's hungry or because he wants to come off as sexy to Harley Quinn, because he doesn't even care about Harley Quinn. And Harley Quinn was actually a well-respected psychologist, and she had a lot going for her, and she had a lot of success going for her. And she threw that all away because she wanted, she wanted a relationship with Joker. She wanted to be with Joker, and she wanted Joker to love her, but Joker does not love her. And I find that interesting because Joker isn't doing crime out of survival because he wants to eat. And he's not doing crime because he wants to come off as sexy to Harley Quinn, because Harley Quinn loves her or loves Joker even though he doesn't care about her. So I find that interesting because it makes me question why. And in the book, I guess in the comic books or in the movies, they said that Joker does it for the chase, the cat and mouse chase between him and Batman. He sees a game between him and Batman, and that's why he is the way he is. He likes Batman chasing after him. He likes the game between, Batman trying to put him in jail and him escaping jail, him committing crime to get Batman's attention. He likes that game, okay? And I guess that's how they explained it, but I do think that is very interesting. It makes me curious that what if you have someone that isn't committing crime out of survival and isn't committing crime to come off as bad and sexy, and like the Joker. And so he does it for the game, the love of the game, the cat and mouse game of being chased and the thrill and the adrenaline and wanting to be captured and getting away, and I guess that's why he does it, and I have to do some more research on it. But I find it curious, why do people commit crime if they're not trying to come off, or they're not trying to cover survival needs, and they're not trying to come off as sexy and bad? So if they're not trying to do those two things, why are they still committing crime? And so I look at the Joker as, trying to understand that. And I'm still trying my best to understand that. And so this is what, this is going to be my first video of psychology of crime, because I still need to question it, and I'm still trying my best to understand it. Because like the instances and examples like the Joker, who he's not doing it, like I said, out of survival, or he's not doing it to come off as sexy for Harley Quinn. So yeah, I do find that interesting, and I question that. I think I do understand I understand partly, but I do want to think about this more and kind of make a part 2 video and be more prepared, talking about the Joker and why people commit crime out of amusement and entertainment, and why they're addicted to it. So I'll probably make another video talking about this. But there are people out there that commit crime to help people. And, I think of like the Robin Hood, which is stealing from the poor, or stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. And I said like the Now You See Me. But, think about, the Holocaust and, what Hitler did. There was a lot of people that, Anne Frank and stuff. There was a lot of people that, they were breaking the German law, but they were helping Jews, get out of the concentration camps, avoid the Germans, and avoid being captured. And there were a lot of people that were breaking the law, committing crime, but they were helping people. Or even with the slave trade and, us having slavery in America. I forgot what they called it, a trail or something, but there were people capturing or saving slaves and sending them up to Canada, if I remember correctly. But they were breaking the law of the United States, the American law, so they could help the slaves be free. And, or for me, my example is giving people magic mushrooms, because I think they can help people, and they're considered illegal. Now Trump is trying to change it, and so that's what I'll say about committing crime to help people. So.